Jack, you started talking about how real estate's being priced, and you used the term price per pound. Are investors looking at replacement value and a price per square foot and ignoring cap rates and IRRs?
Well, I think what's happening now, and the reason why there isn't a lot of transaction velocity in the distressed space in the moment, is because those value-add buyers are buying distressed debt. And so that's why you're not seeing that at the asset level. And I think most of the buyers right now are looking at the distressed properties and saying, even at 30 cents on the dollar, I'm not so sure if I can make this work. So they're still on the sidelines right now buying distressed debt, and until that opportunity, dries up, I don't think you're going to see a huge wave of the distressed buyers coming back in the market, because those value-add players are looking on the debt side right now.
I've heard the same thing about investors pricing properties basically by the pound, and I think that's probably just one more metric they use in addition to cap rates and IRRs.
Great.
Yeah, I think going forward, there will be this emphasis on what is replacement cost, but keep in mind this is different. What do they say? History never repeats itself. It just exactly, it rhymes, and I think it's a bit of a mistake to go back and compare this downturn with the downturn that we saw in the late late 80s, early 90s, because so much of the distressed real estate then had zero cash flow because it was spec development. This time around, it's very different. Most of the problem debt, it's got decent cash flow. The latest number I had was that if you look at the CMBS market, 3/4 of the problem debt is simply debt that's matured. It's actually cash flow positive. It's just the debt has matured, and so that's why we're into this whole pretending and extending. So the caution here is don't make the assumption that history will repeat itself exactly.
Great, thanks.
I think it's definitely true that deals are being done on a price per square foot basis, and that's a major consideration. There's also a lot of variability there, and it's really very asset specific. So you can have something like 1999 K Street in Washington, D.C. that sells at $850 a square foot. And then you can go all the way over to the other coast and see a building on Montgomery Street in California that sells for $174 or $6 a square foot that just traded 2 years ago at $460 a square foot, all depending a lot on the characteristics of the asset, the occupancy levels, the rents, and so on. So I think that that's definitely true. I think it's an interesting play to price in comparison to replacement costs, because the other thing that we haven't talked about or really shown in any of the slides is the development and the supply pipeline. Actually that wasn't my slide. I have another slide that's similar to the employment and vacancy, which is construction and vacancy. We'll have about 40 million feet come online this year. Next year that drops dramatically in the office market to 20 million, and then it drops precipitously again in 2011.
Yeah, I agree that the pipeline has dwindled, and that the oversupply problems that we had previously really aren't present in this go-around. But also what wasn't present back then is the lack of constructive debt. And the key to me is that the community will respond to the issues of supply and demand, but we're only going to respond to those to the extent to which new projects eventually can be appropriately financed. There's going to be a sea change, I believe, in terms of what the banks and the other lenders are going to require to get new deals done. And I'm not kidding. I mean, the deals that we see that are getting done are requiring a lot more equity. If we return to normality, it is not returning to 06 or 07. It's returning to the way things were done, perhaps, and valued in the mid-80s. It's a big change.